everyone. I'm Mrs. Princey, Associate Professor in Psychiatric Nursing. Whenever there is a change in the situation, each and every individual may be anxious or at times they become stressful. These stressful situations can lead to maladaptive behavior if they are not using the coping mechanism effectively. So today I'm going to talk about the stress, which is one of the maladaptive behavior. So we have got the theorist Callista Roy, who has explained about the adaptive response, which is a behavior which is going to lead to an integrity of the human being. So we can say that adaptation is a positive process which is going to cause a healthy life of a person. And if you say a maladaptive behavior or a maladaptive concept, it is a negative process which is going to lead an unhealthy life for a person. So we can say that a maladaptive behavior is going to disintegrate the individual functioning, resulting in the health issues or the mental problems. Right. So let us learn in detail about the adaptation as well as the maladaptation. So first thing is the adaptation. So adaptation is a process which is going to have an impact on the three areas. So one is it is going to have an influence on the health of a person, that is the physical health. It can have an impact on the psychological functioning of a person as well as the social functioning of a person. So we can say that the adaptation is very much important to have a behavior or to live a life which is fullest to its well-being in terms of physical as well as psychological and even the physical functioning of a person. So let us see what is maladaptive behavior. A maladaptive behavior in any one area is going to affect the individual as a whole. Say for example, one of those maladaptive behavior is going to cause a psychiatric problem in the patient, wherein this psychiatric illness is going to cause a difficulty or an impairment in the functioning of a person at work or in a job, wherein the integrity of a person is affected. So a maladaptive behavior is an unhealthy one wherein it can be related to the age appropriate behavior. So the behavior is considered to be maladaptive when it is age inappropriate and when it is going to have an impact on these areas of the functioning. So that is about the maladaptive behavior. Let us see what are those factors which is influencing the adaptive behavior. So mainly we can say the factors such as the perception of an individual in terms of the various situation. How an individual will perceive the situation is one of the important factor. The second factor is the availability of the social support system as well as the coping mechanism which the individual is having. So if he is having adequate social support as well as the coping mechanism, he will be able to adapt to the various changes in the life. So those are the factors which is going to affect the adaptable behavior. Let us see what is group adaptation. So like an individual has to make an adaptation even when a group is working together to achieve a common purpose or a goal, the group adaptation is very much important. So the group adaptation is a process wherein the group has to maintain the balance and function together so that the growth will happen both to the individual as well as the group. So we can say some factors which are really important for the group adaptation. One thing is they should have a good interpersonal relationship, the communication skills that they have to have in a group. The second thing that they have to have is a mutual respect. The third one is the adequate resources which are required for the adaptation, and the fourth one which is required is the previous experience of stressors which is going to contribute to the adapting to the new situation. So these are some factors which are required for a group for the adaptation. So let us see what is stress. Yes. So, the meaning of stress. Stress is an individual's response to a disturbing factor in the environment which is going to require an adaptation. So, we can say that stress is an interaction of a person with his environment. So, if the environment of a person is, good, is comfortable for him, the person will not experience any kind of a stress to deal or to move on. If the environment of a person is disrupted or changed, it is going to cause a reaction which is known as the stress. The concept of the stress is either it can be a stimulus or it can be a reaction. So as a reaction, whenever there is a change in the environment, the person's biological functioning will change. So the response of a person will be elicited as a stress. So that is called as a reaction. Stress as a stimulus. So stress as a stimulus, in a sense, because of a stress, a person's life is going to change, which may show a maladaptive behavior. So stress can be both as a reaction or it can act as a stimulus, which may cause a disruption in the behavior of the person. We can call stress as also a response. So we have got a psychologist, Hansele, who has given a theory about the stress as a physiological response in his model called as General Adaptation Syndrome, GAS model, wherein he has explained because of stress how the adaptation will happen. Based on this particular theory, the GAS theory, the three important concepts of the theory are: first one is stress is a defensive mechanism. Whenever there is a stress, we have got some defensive mechanism which happens, which will start to work. That is the coping mechanism. The second one is we have got the stages in this particular concept or the theory, which are the alarm stage, the resistance stage, as well as the exhaustion stage. The third thing what he has explained is whenever there is a stress, it is going to cause a disruption in the individual or a change in an individual wherein he has to make a adaptation. Otherwise, it will lead to a maladaptation wherein it can result in various disorders or the diseases, and even it can result in the death. So this is the concept of this particular theory, which is the GAS model. So you can see the stages here in the image. We have got the first stage, which is the alarm stage, wherein as soon as a person is experiencing the stress, he will have the stage of alarm. The second stage is the resistance stage. So here the stage of resistance wherein the person is able to tolerate or resist the stressor. The third stage is the exhaustive phase wherein he is not able to manage the stress, the coping mechanisms will fail and it will lead to the exhaustion or he will fail, leading to the maladaptive behavior or any kind of a psychiatric problem. Moving on to what is a stressor. The physical and psychological demands from the environment. So it is a factor which is going to cause the stress. So we can say that the stressor or the stress depends upon certain factors. So one is the perception of the situation as a stress. The second one is the person's past experiences. So previously, if the person has experienced any kind of a stress and how he was able to cope up with those stress, this time when he faces this stress, he will try maximum to cope up with the stress. So it is the individual's past experience which is going to contribute to overcome the stress. The third one is the availability of the social support. If the support is getting from his family or friends or society, he will be able to overcome the stress in a better way. The fourth one is the individual's reaction to the various stresses. So some individuals may adapt very quickly, a reaction to stress may be different. So each individual is different, so there is individual differences in adaptation to the stress. So moving on to the types of the stress, mainly it is being classified into two types. One is the eustress and the distress. Eustress is a good stress which is going to be a beneficial thing for a person for a short period of time. So it is going to enhance the ability of a person both physically as well as mentally. So he can take up various challenges in his work, and also he can strengthen his training. So that is the benefits, or we can say eustress, which is going to help us to reach the goal of the person. It is required by every individual to achieve some kind of a purpose or a goal. Coming to the distress, distress is the bad stress. It is chronic and it is going to disrupt the functioning of the person physically as well as mentally. It can lead to either depression or the anxiety. So you can see here the schematic presentation of the types of the stress, which is eustress and the distress, how it is going to have an impact on an individual. Let us learn about the three important types of stress, which is the acute stress, episodic stress, and the chronic stress. So acute stress is a stretch which happens for a shorter period of time. It is required by every individual to attain some kind of a goal. We can say it as a eustress. So it is going to become a beneficial one to a person, which is going to make him to be alert, focused on his goal. We can say it as a flight or a fight response. Whenever there is a stress, if an individual is able to fight with it, then he is going to come out of the maladaptive behavior. If he is not able to manage those stress, then he will fly away from the stressful situation. So that is the first type of a stress, which is the acute stress. The second type of the stress is the episodic stress. So as the name says, episodic, the stress will be seen in the person every now and then. In people who especially worry a lot, okay, who take into themselves a lot of pressure in attaining certain goals, in those kinds of people, we can see this type of the episodic stress, which is going to result in the maladaptive behaviors like aggression or hostility, which later on is going to have an impact on the person, leading to the depression. So that is the episodic type of the stress. The third type of the stress is a chronic stress. It is the one which is of a long duration, and it is going to have an impact on the person physically as well as mentally. So the chronic stress can lead to various disorders or mental problems like being depressed or anxious, or it can lead to the physical illness of a person. Physiological changes can lead to heart attack, stroke, changes in the blood pressure. So all such kind of the reaction to the chronic stress when a person is undergoing for a longer period of time, wherein he is not able to cope up with it, it can lead to the various disorders. This is about the various types of the stress which I have explained. Let us see what is the coping strategies. Coping strategies are nothing but the physical or the psychological process that an individual will adapt to cope up or to overcome the stressful situation, to reduce or tolerate the stressful situation. So we have various coping mechanisms that an individual will use in times of this stressor. Like it can be related to the time management, or practicing various kind of exercises, aerobic exercises, doing the mental imagery or guided imagery, meditation, yoga. So all such practices that an individual will use to cope up with the stresses, which is going to be very beneficial for an individual to overcome the stress. So we have got a model here which is going to briefly explain about the stress model, which is given by the Strott. So Strott's stress adaptation model. So if you see this model here, the image, we have got some factors which are going to trigger the stress. One is the precipitating factor, the second one is a predisposing factor. So these are the actual causative factors which is acting as a stressor for an individual to end up with the stress. To these stressors, we have got the coping resources. So, coping resources are nothing but the support system that we get from it. Can be the family or the society, or it can be from the friends or neighbors. So, if a person is getting all the resources or the support from the outside, he will be able to cope up with the stress, and it will lead to the adaptation. If the support system is not good, so he may end up with a maladaptive behavior, which is going to cause a psychiatric problem in the person. So we can say that the coping mechanism which an individual will use, it can be a constructive coping mechanisms or a destructive coping mechanism. The ones who use the constructive coping mechanisms will lead to the adaptation or the health status in the continuum, and the ones who use the destructive coping mechanism is going to destruct himself. So there are people who may use the behaviors like alcoholism, smoking, drug abuse. So all these are also coping mechanism in terms of anxiety situation or stress, but it is going to cause a destruction in the individual. It is going to lead a maladaptive behavior. Later on, the individual will develop the psychiatric problem. So this is about the concept of the stress adaptation model given by Stroll. The stress is an important factor which is going to cause a maladaptive response in an individual. If the individual is having adequate coping abilities and support system at times of the stress, he will be able to manage, and adaptation will be easy. Hope you all have understood the topic. Thank you.